This man was caught with human meat roasting over a fire, and the most terrifying part is that the entire city of Lagos had been smelling his cooking for 7 years without realizing they were smelling the deaths of their own neighbors. Clifford Oji was not just a homeless man living under a bridge. He was a hunter who turned the center of a busy city into his personal kitchen. On a cold February morning in 1999, a man named Joseph Bello was walking home from a church vigil when he heard a sound that did not belong in the city. It was not the sound of cars or the wind, it was the sound of a woman crying from inside a house made of old tires. When Joseph looked inside, he did not find furniture or clothes. Instead, he saw a fire with human meat roasting on top of it. He saw a man named Clifford Orji standing over a pot, preparing a meal that would haunt Nigeria forever. This was not a movie or a scary story. It was a real-life nightmare happening right under a busy flyover where thousands of people drove their cars every single day without knowing they were passing a man-eater. The area around the Toyota bus stop in Oshodi was always loud and busy, which is exactly why Clifford Oji chose it. He knew that in a city with millions of people, a man acting strange would be ignored. For 7 years, Clifford Oji lived in a shack made of tires and garbage, and for 7 years, people thought the smell coming from his home was just burning trash or an ordinary barbecue. But when the crowd finally broke into that shack after Joseph Bello raised the alarm, they found things that no human being should ever see. There were human skulls, rib cages, and legs scattered around the floor like they were nothing but wood for a fire. Clifford Oji had managed to live as a cannibal in the middle of Nigeria's biggest city, and he had done it by pretending to be a madman so that nobody would ever come close enough to find out his dark secret. When the mob of angry people caught Clifford, they found a woman named Awal trapped inside the tires. She was so skinny that her bones were sticking out of her skin, and she was too weak to even stand up on her own. She had been kept there as meat for Clifford's next meal. The people were so angry that they started beating Clifford, and they only stopped when the police arrived to take him away. This moment marked the beginning of one of the most famous and scary crime cases in the history of West Africa. Everyone wanted to know how one man could kill and eat people for 7 years without anyone stopping him. The truth was that Clifford was very smart about how he picked his victims and how he kept the police away from his kitchen by acting like he did not understand what was happening around him. Clifford Oji was not just a lone killer, he was a symbol of how someone can hide in plain sight. The police found that he had transformed the space under the bridge into a functional living and killing area. There were different sections for different activities. One part of the tire shack was for sleeping, another part was for the fire where he cooked, and yet another part was used to store the remains of the people he had already eaten. The sheer amount of bones found in the area suggested that many people had gone missing over the years, and their families likely never knew what happened to them. It is a terrifying thought that a major highway could serve as the roof for such a horrible place for so long without any authority figure checking on what was happening inside that pile of tires. Before he became the most feared man in Lagos, Clifford Oji was just a regular person trying to make a living. He was born in 1966 in Enugu State and moved to the big city of Lagos to find a better life, just like many other young men at the time. At first, he worked in the market selling small razor blades to people passing by. People who saw him back then said he seemed normal, even if he was a bit quiet. But something changed in his mind and he stopped selling blades and started calling himself a traditional healer. He moved his life under the Oshodi flyover and began building his house out of old tires. He started wearing dirty clothes and stopped cutting his hair so that people would think he was mentally ill and leave him alone, which gave him the privacy he needed to commit his terrible crimes. It is important to understand that Clifford Oji was very careful about who he attacked. He mostly attacked women who were walking alone or young girls who were selling things on the street. He told the police later that he used a special powder that he would blow into a woman's face to make her confused and obedient, so she would follow him back to his tire shack without fighting back. Once they were inside his hidden room under the bridge, they were trapped. He would keep them there, sometimes for days, before killing them. Because the bridge was so noisy with the sound of trucks and cars, nobody could hear the screams of the people trapped inside the tires. This allowed Clifford to continue his killings for years because the city was too busy to notice that people were disappearing right in the middle of the street. If you want to make sure you never miss the truth behind the world's most terrifying crimes, you need to subscribe to Tremendous Crime in History right now. We spend hours researching the facts that others miss so we can bring you the full story of what really happened in cases like Clifford Orji's. By subscribing, you help us keep these stories alive so that history does not repeat itself and so that we can all learn how to stay safe in a dangerous world. Inside the shack, the police found something that proved Clifford was not just a hungry man living on the street. They found 80,000 naira in cash and a mobile phone. Back in 1999, having a mobile phone in Nigeria meant you were very rich or you were talking to very powerful people. This made the police believe that Clifford was not just eating people, he was selling their body parts to rich people who wanted them for rituals. This part of the story is what truly scares people even today. It means that there were other people involved who were paying Clifford to kill innocent victims. Even though Clifford was the one caught with the meat, many people believe the powerful people who bought the parts were the real monsters behind the kitchen under the bridge. The presence of the money and the phone destroyed the idea that Clifford was simply a man who had lost his mind. A person who is truly mad usually does not have the ability to manage large amounts of cash or maintain a working relationship with wealthy clients who own expensive technology. This suggests that Clifford was a businessman of death. He was providing a service to people who believed that human body parts could bring them luck, power, or money. While he was the one doing the dirty work under the flyover, he was likely part of a much larger chain of crime that reached into high places in society. This is why his arrest caused a huge panic in Lagos as people began to wonder who else was involved in these dark acts. Clifford Oji did not walk alone, even though he was the most famous person in the case. He had a friend named Tairu Aliu, who also lived in a shack nearby. When the angry crowd destroyed Tairu's house, they found a deep pit that went 4 meters into the ground. This pit was used like a jail cell to keep people before they were killed. The police found knives, cutlasses, and blood-stained tools that showed that these two men had turned the area under the flyover into a professional slaughterhouse. They worked together to lure victims in, using the busy market as a hunting ground. While the city of Lagos was moving and shaking above them, these two men were busy underneath, ending lives and preparing human flesh as if it were just another day at work. The discovery of the money and the phone changed the way everyone looked at Clifford. He was not just a madman who lost his mind. He was a businessman who was making a lot of money from death. He told the police during his interviews that there were up to 10 other people involved in his group. He called his victims meat and showed no sadness or regret for what he had done. He even laughed when he talked about how he prepared the bodies. This behavior made the public even more furious because it showed that he knew exactly what he was doing. The police paraded him in front of cameras with the human heads and limbs they found in his house, and the images were so scary that they were printed in every newspaper in Nigeria. I want to hear from you in the comments section below. Do you think Clifford Oji was really a madman who did not know what he was doing? Or do you think he was a cold-blooded killer who was pretending to be crazy to get away with his crimes? Write your opinion in the comments right now so we can discuss the truth together. One of the victims was a woman named Ino who had come from Akwa Ibom State to trade in the market. Her family had been looking for her for a long time, not knowing that she had ended up in Clifford's kitchen. When her head was found in the shack, it broke the hearts of people all over the country. It showed that any regular person going to work could become a victim of the horror under the bridge. The fact that the skulls of some victims were missing suggested that they had been sold and taken away to other places. This meant that the crime was much bigger than just one bridge in Lagos. It was a network of evil that spread far and wide, and Clifford was just the person at the center of it all. The horror of the missing skulls points toward the ritual market. In many dark traditions, the human skull is considered the most valuable part for those seeking supernatural power.
If Clifford was selling these skulls, it explains why he had so much money in his possession. It also means that for every body part found in his shack, there might have been many more that were already sold and moved across the country. The investigation into Tairu Aliyu and the deep pit showed that this was an organized operation. They had a system for capturing, holding, and processing their victims. This level of organization is what makes the Clifford Oji case stand out as one of the most organized and terrifying examples of cannibalism and ritual killing in history. After he was arrested, the story of Clifford Oji took a very strange turn that left many people feeling like justice was never truly served. On December 7, 2000, he was sent to Kirikiri Maximum Prison to wait for his trial. But the trial never really happened. For years, Clifford sat in a prison cell while the lawyers and doctors argued about whether he was too crazy to stand trial. The law says that if a person's brain is not working correctly, they cannot be judged in a court of law. Because of this, Clifford stayed in prison for more than 10 years without ever being officially sentenced for the murders. This made the families of the victims very sad because they wanted to see him punished for the lives he had taken under that bridge in Oshodi. While he was in prison, Clifford's health started to get worse. The prison guard said that he started acting even more strangely and that his mind was completely gone. They tried to send him to psychiatric hospitals, but the hospital said they could not keep him because he was too dangerous and they did not have enough space for long-term prisoners. So Clifford remained in a gray area of the law, not a free man, but not a convicted criminal either. In 2012, he even tried to sue the government, saying that it was unfair to keep him in prison for 12 years without a trial. It was a shocking move for a man who had been caught with human heads in his house, but it showed that he still had some understanding of how the legal system worked. On August 17, 2012, the story of Clifford Oji finally ended in a way that nobody expected. He died in his sleep inside his prison cell at age 46. The doctors were not sure exactly why he died, but his body was tired and his mind was broken. When he died, no family members came to claim his body. He was a man who had been forgotten by his family and hated by his country. He was buried in a place for people who have no one, ending the life of Nigeria's most famous cannibal. Even though he is gone, the memory of what happened under the flyover still makes people in Lagos feel cold when they walk past the Toyota bus stop at night. The story of Clifford Oji is a very important lesson for everyone. It teaches us that we must pay attention to our surroundings and that we should never ignore things that seem wrong, even if they seem small. A strange smell or a weird sound might be nothing, but in this case, it was the only clue to a massive crime that lasted for 7 years. We must look out for one another and make sure that the dark corners of our cities are not used by people like Clifford to hurt others. If people had listened to their feelings sooner, maybe Awal and Ino would still be alive. The kitchen of horror is closed, but the history of what happened there remains as a warning to us to stay alert and protect our communities.